Welcome to Beyond the Scale, the show where everyday heroes share their stories on how they turn their lives around for the healthier. I'm Coach Brittany, and today's guest is Chris Harder. He's going to be teaching you how you can use your finances to eat healthier and live happier. Hope you enjoy. Welcome, Chris Harder. I'm so excited to have you on the show today.
Can't wait to be here. Thanks.
Yeah, absolutely. So I know you're doing so much great inspirational work out there, helping tons of people. I really want to learn about how you got there. But first, I know you started off as a banking executive, right?
Yeah.
So how did you get out of that?
Oh, I was forced out of it, kind of. Part forced out and then part chose to get out. So I spent 11 years in banking in a few different roles. And it was always kind of in an executive role. And it was one of those careers where you just woke up one day and you didn't know how you got there, but you were there. And you were so far down that road, you didn't really know how you would get out and how you do anything else. So I spent 8.5 years at a big international bank and worked my way up there real quick. And that was fun. And it was a really great experience. And it was a positive atmosphere. And it was like teaching sales and tons of leadership until the recession hit. And it went from that really positive atmosphere to all of a sudden negative. I mean, money like shut right off. And when I say money, I mean both the money that we were lending as an institution and also the money coming in for paychecks for me and for my entire team. And so morale got really bad. And it felt like everything just changed overnight. And that's when it went from this great atmosphere to probably the biggest challenge I had experienced up to that point in my life. I remember for over a year, I would wake up first thing in the morning and catch a first flight out of town. And I'd fly to some obscure town like Rapid City, South Dakota, wherever we had a branch, and walk in and say, I'm here to shut you guys down. Ooh. And I'd have to have conversations one by one saying, here's your severance package, I'll answer any questions you have. And the responses I got, keep in mind, I'm like 29 years old doing this to people in their 40s and 50s with families, right? And the responses I got were crazy. Everything from extreme anger to extreme relief and everything in between. So it was a real challenge for me at that time. And then it became my turn. They called me into the office after a year of doing that and they said, hey, take a severance package or a demotion of a demotion of a demotion of a demotion to Jersey. And I was living in Minneapolis at the time. And I said, I'm out of here. Like, I'm so miserable, something needs to change, I'm out of here. So I took a partnership with a tiny little startup mortgage lender, and we grew the daylights out of that thing really well while everybody else was shutting their doors. Okay. And so you would think that was another positive experience. But I wasn't working in my zone of genius. I wasn't doing what I liked, and I certainly wasn't working around people that I necessarily enjoyed, where we shared the same ethos, right? We had different beliefs. And with every year that went by, with every time we got busier, as we grew, it became more and more obvious to me that something had to change. So that's really how I like to say I was kind of forced out, but also chose to get out as well.
Got it. So did you know from the beginning that you weren't necessarily meant to do that, that wasn't your life passion, or it just took going through all that to really realize, to hear that voice inside screaming at you that this isn't what you're meant for?
I was in my 20s, right? And until things went poorly, they were going awesome. And so I thought, hey, I'll do this the rest of my life. I'm having fun. Right. I'm working with people that I really love. And I'm not stereotyping people in their 20s, but let's be honest, you think things are going to last forever. You think you're never going to get old. You think this is how it's always going to be. Well, that's how I thought. And every year I remember I'd get a massive raise. And being in my 20s and thinking that every year I can count on this massive raise, Lori, my wife, we would literally spend all of the money we made that year and then some on this awesome lifestyle, or what we thought was an awesome lifestyle, because we thought it was going to last forever. And then when it shut off like a faucet, that was the craziest wake-up call we ever had to figure out how to manage through.
How did that affect you, like personally, internally, physically?
I gained 30 pounds throughout that entire, let's call it the period of the recession, right? Because when you're unhappy, what do? You eat for these short-term little moments of joy, but that's all they are. It's not true happiness. It's just a short moment of joy. And I was on the road a lot. And so after a hard day of, hey, I'm letting you go to like 10 people in the branch that day, I wanted nothing more than to go back to my hotel where I was lonely and tired and just have a couple of drinks to try and forget everything and eat whatever kind of comfort food the hotel had, right? So that's a recipe for disaster physically.
Right.
And then mentally, when it became my turn to, take my severance package and I had to start over financially, because we lost everything, by the way, when we had to start over financially, it stripped me of what I thought my worth was. People, they have this worth. They put themselves on a scale. They say, I'm valuable because I'm a good provider, or I'm valuable because I'm the smartest person in the room, or I'm valuable because I've got the best nutrition tips, or I'm valuable, whatever they do, however they label themselves. Well, I labeled myself as valuable because I was able to make a lot of money and because I was a good leader. Well, when that was stripped from me, both of those things, it was a real rude awakening that I had to find something that I valued myself, with or on, that couldn't be stripped from me. So while it felt like the worst moment of my life, it ended up being the best moment of my life because it forced me to start digging and figuring out what that would be.
So you gained 30 pounds.
Yeah.
Your self-confidence probably isn't that high at that point. How did you start the road to, the uphill battle?
So my wife at the time was this fitness competitor and personal trainer, and she was just starting to get on the cover of lots of magazines, right? So she was as fit as you could possibly be. And I hated how I looked and felt with my clothes off next to her. I mean, there is nothing worse than feeling like your significant other, it has it totally dialed in and you're going the opposite direction. That'll beat up your confidence in a hurry. So I knew something had to change. I didn't know what it was gonna be, and I didn't feel strong enough in the moment to change it. It wasn't until one of her clients that she had trained for about a year was using some nutritional supplements, and she would always ask us to try them, meal replacements and such. And we'd say, no, that stuff's crazy, that doesn't work. And her client went on to lose something like 90 pounds in 10 months. It was extreme weight loss, right?
Yeah.
And when she lost the weight, she didn't have any saggy skin or anything left over. I mean, she looked great, she looked healthy, which is not typical of what you see when somebody has fast, rapid weight loss.
Right.
And that was enough of a wake-up call to finally get Lori's attention. And Lori went from saying, no, I'm not gonna try it, to reaching kind of a low point of her own because she was getting ready for a fitness competition. She was expected to win it. And instead, her body stopped responding to her normal means of getting ready for it. And so she went to this fitness competition and totally bombed. And you know how we're finally open to new ideas once we're at a low point?
Right.
Well, that was a low point for her. She came home crying and said, I don't think I can do this anymore. I give up so much for this career. Maybe it's not worth it. Maybe it's not me. She went into the gym the next day and told her client, Holly, the exact same thing. And Holly said, Lori, for like almost a year, I've been asking you to try these supplements. Would you try them? And she said, yes, I'll try anything at this point. So she tried it, and I remember she came home and she's like, hey, I'm gonna try these things. I said, no, you're not. You're not spending our money on that garbage. Because money, remember, we're rebuilding financially at the time. So money was tight. And she said, yes, I am. I've gotta try something to get myself back. And a week went by of her using the products, and she was a radically different woman. Got her energy back, her mojo back. I saw her body totally respond quickly in such a short period of time. And that's when I went from the skeptical husband who was saying, you're not gonna spend our money on that junk, to kind of tucking my ego and my tail between my legs and saying, could I try too? Yeah, and so that began the journey of me getting back in shape. And not just getting back in shape, but getting into probably the best shape of my life at that point. What it is when you finally find a set of tracks to run on, that's typically what makes somebody get into action. People need a set of tracks to run on. So whether it's a boot camp that they finally joined, whether it's nutritional products that, for some reason make it seem easy to, whatever it is, once someone has a set of tracks to run on, that's when they'll typically start on that journey.
I mean, I love that you guys were able to do that together and, get on that journey together to better yourselves. Because I'm sure low self-confidence affected the relationships in your life, not only with Lori, but family members or friends.
Work, everything.
Work, yeah.
You cannot be your best if you're always thinking in the back of your mind, oh, I feel fat, or oh, I feel this, or oh, I've got no energy.
Right.
And so I'm a huge proponent of everybody leading the healthiest life that they can, right? Do you have to be a bodybuilder? No. Just be as fit as you can, make the best choices that you can, challenge yourself to make better choices, because everything else you're trying to accomplish in life will fall into place that much better. You want a better relationship? Well, if you have the energy for it and you feel confident, that relationship is going to be easier, right? You're probably going to pick less fights, you're going to have better romance, the whole 9 yards. Want to do better at your career? Well, have more confidence, have more energy, feel better about yourself when you walk into a boardroom. Yourself affects everything else you're trying to accomplish. Get this mastered and everything else will fall into place easy.
Yeah, and I know for me, when I first was trying to work out, I was like, oh, I don't have energy to do it. I don't know. And then when I actually started working, I'm like, hey, wait, I have way more energy than ever. And it definitely helps you, want to accomplish more things in life. So how has getting more energy through working out helped you become successful again?
Well, number one, it takes way more work and way more energy than people think to be successful. I mean, you have to be able to endure embarrassing moments where you think you're being judged, work the late nights, work the long hours. You need everything you can possibly put, every weapon you can possibly put in your arsenal in order to truly reach this level of success that you want. And that's why most people, if we're just being really honest on the show, don't reach the level of success, probably not even close, that they actually really want for themselves. And they start lowering the bar. They say, well, this is good enough. Well, I've got a pretty good life. When one day they were shooting for here and now they're settling for right here. And it's because they don't have the energy and the confidence and the tracks to run on to be the best version of themselves so that they can then be that best version for everybody else and for the mission that they're trying to accomplish.
Absolutely. Financially, how important do you think it is to invest in health? Like, is it worth spending that extra buck to get your health in check?
Absolutely. You're always going to get what you pay for, right? Opt for the better food. I mean, let's just start with food itself. Mm-hmm. If you're buying fresh produce and chicken and fish and those types of things, typically they're more expensive than the processed garbage. So right there's one example where if you have your finances in order, then you can buy better food that's going to give you more energy and make it easier to be fit and healthy. Then supplements help supplement food, and we all need supplements. Well, for you to be able to buy good supplements and not stuff that's bottled in someone's basement with a good marketing plan behind it, right? Like, because that's out there,
I
right?
believe it.
That again takes money. To be able to join a boot camp, to be able to join a gym, to get a trainer, to go to SoulCycle, whatever it is, it takes money. And that's just the way the world works. So if you get your finances dialed in, that helps make your journey of becoming healthier easier. And notice how the two work together. When you start to feel healthier and have more energy, it's easier to do better at your job or in your career or with your goals. But then that also makes it easier for you to buy more healthy experiences. And so it becomes this circle or this self-fulfilling prophecy of everything getting better at once.
I love that. Now, I also heard that you read 30 books in 30 days.
Did.
First off, how the heck did you do that? And secondly, how has that helped you with discipline just in life?
Oh God, okay. So I learned so much when I read 30 books in 30 days. And quite honestly, they were lessons I did not expect to learn. Here's why I did it. Let me start with that.
Okay.
So about 3.5 years ago, everything was good. And you ever hear the phrase, good is the enemy of great? Like, good so some people, good might sound like a good place to be, but it's not when you know you have greatness inside of you.
Yeah, it's settling.
That gap is, it's settling. That gap is lonely. Like, it's this asterisk in the back of your head the whole time, like, you're better than this, you're better than this. And it didn't help that my wife, Lori, was like on a rocket ship. She was doing all the right things that I was not doing because I was just kind of treading water in good. So she was going to the events that she needed to go to, reading the books she needed to do, hiring the coaches she needed to hire. Like, she was all in on her goals. So she's on this rocket ship. I'm hanging out down here at good, and it didn't take a rocket scientist to figure out that one day soon, she's going to be up here, I was going to be down here, and there's going to be far too much of a gap for us to have a good relationship. I think a lot of people, if they're honest with themselves, they know one of them's playing big, one of them's playing small, and it's holding each other back, right? And it causes animosity in a relationship. So that's where we were. Now, props to Lori, she never said anything, but I know that she was wishing that I would be on board with the pace that she wanted to grow towards her goals with. I found myself actually resentful when she would bring up big ideas. I found myself resentful when she was talking about this new coaching program she's in or this new event she wants to go to. And I remember being at dinner thinking, why are you resentful that she's talking about positive things and you really have nothing to talk about? Quite honestly, Chris, I think you're kind of boring to your wife right now because I was just treading water. I wasn't challenging myself. I knew something had to change. And I was scrolling on Instagram because that's what you do when things are just good enough.
Yeah, you just keep scrolling.
Yeah, I was scrolling on Instagram and I came across this guy who I didn't know then. I know him pretty well now. He's in his garage doing this selfie video. And he's like, here's my Ferrari, here's my Lamborghini. But what I love the most in here are all the books. And his garage walls were layered in bookshelves full of books. And it's like, what is this and who is this guy? Like, the cars caught my attention because I'm a car lover. But then when he panned to the books and said, here's what I love most in here, I was like, okay, what is this? And he went on to talk about how he reads a book a day every single day of his life.
Wow. And
And he's this massively successful entrepreneur. And matter of fact, it's Ty Lopez. If you
okay, yeah, absolutely.
And I thought, if this guy, who I didn't know then, can read a book a day, and it's given him this kind of lifestyle, maybe I could do something like read 30 books in 30 days or something to radically up-level myself. Now, at the time, I was not a reader. I'm embarrassed to say I had never started and finished a book by myself in my adult life.
Okay.
Right? But hey, that's my story. That's where I was.
Yeah, but yeah, exactly.
And so it was not a strong point. This kind of stewed in me for a few days after I saw that, and I thought about it more and more and more. And I'm like, yeah, this is what I have to do. It's like a calling. I know that's weird. I went to Lori, and I remember thinking that she was going to make fun of me because I was not a reader, and I wasn't doing anything extraordinary in my life at the time. And I said, babe, I'm going to read 30 books in 30 days. I need to do something in order to up-level myself. I remember seeing, I think it was relief on her face. I'm not kidding. Instead of her being like, you're not going to do it, she's like, oh my God, that's a great idea. How can I help you? So I'm sure she was quite relieved. And I cleared my entire month. I think it was March, if I remember correctly, 3.5 years ago. I had picked about 10 to 12 books out, and I knew the rest would just kind of find me. Mm-hmm. And the only requirements for the books was this. They had to be less than 300 pages, and they had to improve me in some way. They were, self-development books, spiritual books, 7 steps how to do whatever, like very diverse books, as long as it fit that 2 criteria. And about 15 books in, I remember rolling over, I was in bed trying to finish it before I went to sleep, and rolling over and saying to Lori, babe, you're not gonna believe this, but all of these books so far, they're different, but they have one common thread, and that common thread is giving. Like, giving is the secret to relationships. Giving is a secret to your career. Giving is a secret to, your body. Give yourself. Like, every single book, this was the common thread, and I couldn't believe it. So I watched for this common thread for the rest of the books. And sure enough, 30 out of 30 books, this secret, if you will, this common thread held true, and it held true in a really big way. Like it was not forcing that thread in there. It was real.
Yeah.
And that became the inspiration that got me starting to think about my podcast, For the Love of Money, which is when good people make good money, they do great things. Because I'd always had this generous side inside of me. I had never explored it before. Why am I generous? What can I do with it? How big could I give? And this kind of started to spark those ideas. So that's one of the things that came out of reading 30 books in 30 days.
It's amazing that you mentioned how you were nervous to go to Lori to tell her about it because you assumed that, she would think a certain way or because you weren't a great reader. But the fact that she was so supportive when you went to her with that, I think is so great. And look at, now you have that podcast. Like, that's amazing.
Yeah, and not just the podcast. I've got the habit of reading. I've caught up to Lori in terms of, being an interesting spouse, doing big things. Uh-huh. Everything about it taught me how much time I was wasting on stupid things like social media and TV shows that I could care less about. Because here's the funny thing. I thought the biggest challenge of reading 30 books in 30 days was going to be finding the time to do it. That was the easiest part. The toughest, but I didn't realize how much time I was wasting. So there was no problem reading these books. The toughest part was, it was physically challenging reading 30 books in 30 days. I remember the 3rd day in, I was like, oh great, of course I'm getting a flu. Achy muscles, and I was tired, and my eyes were kind of weird. I was like, wait a minute, that's not the flu. That's from sitting like this for the last 2 days. So I learned I had to stand up, I had to lay down, I had to read like this, I had to keep changing my position to read 30 books in 30 days. Mentally, it was one heck of a challenge. I had to attach it to a charity. I went on Facebook on day 1, I'm like, hey guys, here's what I'm doing. I'm attaching this to Make-A-Wish. I used it as like a drive, right? So over the 30 days, if you guys donate money, Lori and I will match whatever you donate in those 30 days to hold me accountable. It's like when somebody runs one of these Tough Mudders, and they're like, hey guys, I'm raising money, I'll run the Tough Mudder for it. I kind of took that same idea. And at the end of the 30 days, we were able to raise $15,000 for Make-A-Wish. How cool is that?
Yeah, that's super cool.
So there's just all sorts of great things that came out of that period of my life.
That's awesome. Now, do you have any book recommendations?
Oh yeah, for sure. I always say book recommendations are such a personal thing because what you're seeking in life is probably different than what I'm seeking. Where you're at in life might be different than where I'm at in life. So a blanket recommendation is a difficult thing to do. But the first book I read, and this is probably no accident, was called Tuesdays with Morrie. It's a true story. Okay. It's one of the greatest books on the planet. It's an easy read. I read it every single year now as a reminder to come back to what's important, because that's what the book's all about. It's this guy who kind of gets distracted in his career, doing big things, and there's this professor that he used to have that he had made a promise to. They never kept the promise, and somehow he ends up in contact with this professor again. I'll let you guys read the book, but it's a beautiful story that reminds me to stay grounded in the important things as our pace picks up. As
the pace picks up, do you ever deal with negative self-talk still? I know you used to compare yourself to others a lot. So do you still deal with that?
Yeah, judgment is kind of how I label that. Okay. Judgment of yourself, judgment of other people. Typically, anyone who judges themselves, they're also judging other people, or anyone who judges other people are typically judging themselves, and it can crush your confidence. What happens is when you walk into a room, if you're being judgmental, your fear is they must be doing the same thing to me, right? That's the psychology behind it. And so when you can release judgment, it does so much good for yourself. You're not letting other people off the hook, you're letting yourself off the hook. And so I went to this retreat in Costa Rica, and I wasn't even aware of how judgmental I was. I was semi-aware, but it's not like it was this thing I was trying to conquer. And I went to this retreat. It was a yoga and meditation retreat that Lori literally tricked me into going. I'm not joking. It's a different story. And I got there, and sure enough, day one, here's this guy arriving at the retreat, a guy I had an experience, a bad experience with 3 years ago. I'm like, oh, heck no. Like, if this dude's going to be here, I'm not sticking around. I was literally going to get a flight and go home.
Oh, wow.
And I was judging him. I thought he was weird. I thought he was a hippie. I thought he was this. I thought he was that. By day two, I loved this dude so much. He was so cool. He was so interesting. He was doing so many big things that I would have never guessed he was doing, probably bigger than you and I will ever do, that I realized, holy crap, here's somebody that you had one opinion of and you totally judged, and you were going to leave because he showed up. And he ended up being one of the human beings that I loved the most, and still do up to this point, right? And that moment, that transition, I remember literally like slapped me across the face. And that was my moment of stop judging people, because you're getting it all wrong, and B, it's making you miserable. And so I came back from that retreat in Costa Rica a few years ago, and it was like judgment had just been pulled out of me. Now, does it leave you for good? No. None of our habits do, right? So if you have an eating issue, if you have a judgment issue, if you have a confidence issue, whatever it is, it never leaves you for good, but you learn how to manage it. You get the tools to manage it. And so now when it pops up, it's like on autopilot that I can squash it and reframe it right away. If I see somebody walking by in what I would, judge in the past as, wow, why would you dress like that? What a weird outfit. Now that thought might come up. I'll catch it, reframe it right away, and appreciate the diversity that they offer to the atmosphere around me.
And now reframing, you're talking about like you have that negative thought, taking that same thought, but just twisting it positively?
Absolutely.
Okay.
How can you choose to see that thought differently? Or how can you make a different decision here? So it's not just judgment. Let's say somebody always keeps making the wrong food choices, or they always keep skipping the gym in favor of something else. If you can stop in that moment and just be conscious of it, you don't always have to make the right choice, but if you're conscious of it, you're going to start making the right choice more often. So will you be 100% once you start becoming aware of it? No. But if you're 90% or 80% better, think of how radically better your life will end up making those better choices.
I know in my life, like recognizing the judgment and assumptions that I made on people, like dropping that opened so many doors that like you would have never thought of before. And I mean, I absolutely love it. It's just something that you constantly have to work on, though.
It's such a heavy burden on us. Anything, like whether you're not forgiving somebody, whether you're always judging people, whatever, it's like this heavy backpack that you're carrying with you everywhere. And the minute you take it off, you're like, holy crap, I didn't realize how light life could actually be.
Yeah, totally. Going back to your earlier self, what would you tell someone that is in those shoes that maybe thinks the money's never going to run out? What advice would you give them?
Oh, wow. So I've been thinking about that a lot, actually, because when you get super burnt, like you lose everything and you have to start over, it's this great lesson that teaches you to take really good care of your money when you get it again going forward. But I'd rather people not have to have that experience in order to finally take care of their money. And so I've been thinking about that, and I thought if everybody would do just this, once you start making money, once you start getting momentum, once you start to see it rolling in, what do? We say, oh my gosh, it's finally happening. I've been waiting forever for this. I'm going to go get the new car. I'm going to go get the new house. I'm going to buy these better clothes or this awesome bag. If they would just wait 12 months, if they had a 12-month rule, right? So 12 months from when they could buy it to when they actually do buy it, then they would always be buying after they earned the money instead of as they're earning the money. And so that's my one little hack is abide by that 12-month rule. The minute you can buy it and the minute you do want it, wait 12 months and then you'll be buying it in a much more comfortable fashion.
Oh, that's awesome. Because I know myself, like I'll get a raise and be like, oh, next paycheck, let me go get this, let me go get that.
It's human nature, we all do.
Yeah, and then my lifestyle changes and then I still don't save any money. And it's like, man, but I love that 12-month rule actually.
At least for big things.
Yeah, right, totally. Now that you are currently, helping people, you have different programs, you have your podcast. What do you see people struggle with most when they're trying to manage their money?
I would say self-discipline.
Okay.
Like self-discipline is this monster that sabotages all of our goals, whether it's managing money or relationships or whatever. It's hard to make the choices that will pay you the biggest rewards because of delayed gratification. Like delayed gratification is this hard thing that we all struggle, or most people struggle with. But if you can master that, not all the time, but most of the time, then everything is going to fall into place so much better. You'll be able to save more money, you'll be able to make more money, you'll be able to have more options, because what happens is having more money just gives you options. Like, that's it. People say, oh, more money, more problems. No, it's more money, more options. You have the option of whether you want to say yes or no to things instead of having to say yes to them. You have the option of what kind of career you want. You have the option of what kind of home you want to live in. You have the option of where you want to go on vacation. It's more money, more options.
That's totally a reframe right there. I totally caught that, and I love it. Yeah. More money, more problems. Nope. More money, more options.
If you say more money, more problems, what are you going to attract? You're just going to attract more problems, and you're going to push the money away.
Right. Now, kind of wrapping it up here, I want to know, what does living beyond the scale mean to you?
So here's why I love this question. People picture a scale, and what is a scale? It's something to measure with, right? It's a unit of measurement. So living beyond the scale, to me, would be living the kind of lifestyle where it's almost immeasurable. Like, it's beyond anything that the scale could measure. That, to me, is when you've made it. So if you have a relationship that is beyond measure, if you have, a relationship with yourself, your happiness that is beyond measure, if you have financial abundance that is beyond measure, a family that is beyond measure, to me, that is living beyond the scale, and that's what everybody should strive for.
Absolutely. Thank you for sharing everything that you mentioned today. Thank you for sharing your story with us. I think that's very powerful for us all to hear and learn from. If we have our listeners that want to, get their mind right, get their money right,
yes.
Where can they find your products?
There's two places to find me.
Okay.
Go to fortheloveofmoney.com. That's FOR, fortheloveofmoney.com. That's where my podcast is.
Okay.
That's also where you can check out my mastermind. Also, you can always find me at Chris W. Harder on Instagram.
And we'll make sure we put the links around the video here. And if you are ready to get your fitness journey going, make sure you check out fitbodybootcamp.com and get your 3 free sessions. Well, it's such a pleasure having you on the show, Chris, and I hope to have you on soon again, learn more from you.
I will totally come back on your show. You guys rock.
Thanks. Did you know that you could have done a full workout in the amount of time it took you to listen to this podcast? Go to fitbodybootcamp.com to claim your 3 free sessions now. And remember to join me next Tuesday so you can see who our special guest is. Until then, remember to live a fit body, fit mind forever.